In today's video, we're talking about a woman whose courage and devotion are truly breathtaking. Imagine this: a mother who went to great lengths to protect her children's honor, even camping beside their bodies for months on end. Yes, I'm talking about Rizpah, concubine of King Saul, whose story is marked by tragedy and remarkable strength. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share where you're watching from. After the death of King Saul, Israel entered a phase of great instability and conflict. The kingdom, which had been under Saul's leadership, now needed to reorganize and consolidate. Saul, the first king of Israel, left a legacy of complexity and challenges for his successor. Saul's death not only created a power vacuum, but also divided the kingdom into factions. David, who had been anointed by God as the new king, was still not accepted by all Israelites. The tribes were split between supporting Saul's house and accepting David as king. During this period, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was proclaimed king of the northern tribes of Israel, while David ruled the tribe of Judah in the south. This division created a politically tense and conflict-ridden situation, with the rivalry between the two houses fueling a civil war that lasted several years. Rizpah, as Saul's concubine, was at the heart of this political turmoil. Her story is intertwined with the fate of the royal family and the consequences of Saul's actions. Politics of alliances and the struggle for power were intense, and Saul's actions against the Gibeonites, people who had been under Israel's protection, had serious repercussion. With David's rise to power, he faced the challenge of restoring peace and justice in a kingdom devastated by war and distrust. The issue with the Gibeonites, who had been unjustly attacked by Saul, became a critical point for David. The need to right past wrongs and restore God's blessing on the land was part of the complex task of governing and unifying the kingdom. David, in dealing with the situation, had to make difficult choices and confront the consequences of decisions made by Saul. Rizpah, in turn, became a symbol of resistance and suffering, representing the pain and struggle of many involved in the turbulent transition of power in Israel. In the biblical text, Rizpah was a concubine of King Saul, the first king of Israel. Despite her status, her life and that of her children were marked by a tragedy that illustrates the impact of political decisions on personal and family life. Rizpah had two sons with Saul, Armoni and Mephibosheth. It is crucial not to confuse this Mephibosheth with the Mephibosheth who was the son of Jonathan, David's best friend. The Mephibosheth, who was Jonathan's son, was Saul's grandson, and his story is distinct from that of his half-brothers, Armoni and Mephibosheth, who were Rizpah's sons. Armoni and Mephibosheth were therefore direct descendants of Saul and, as such, held significant status, even as the children of concubine. In a society where lineage and status were extremely important, this placed Rizpah and her children in a delicate position, especially after Saul's death. Rizpah's relationship with her children exemplifies how the life of a royal concubine was complex and often exposed to injustices and hardships. As a concubine, Rizpah did not have the same status as the king's official wives, but her connection to the royal family through her children placed her in a prominent position in the biblical narrative. Rizpah's sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, became involved in a tragic episode that underscores the harshness of political decisions and their consequences for those not directly involved in power struggle. When David ascended to the throne and faced the need to reconcile with the Gibeonites, Rizpah's sons became victims of a political arrangement necessary to restore justice. Although Rizpah was not a central figure in the political history, her role as a mother and her response to the tragic fate of her children reveal the depth of her character and the impact of decisions made by leaders on the lives of ordinary people. Rizpah's suffering and the tragedy involving her children reveal a personal facet of biblical stories that often remains hidden in the narratives of great events and political decisions. She is remembered not only for her connection to Saul, but also for her courage and determination to protect the dignity of her children in a desperate situation. To understand the depth of the tragedy involving Rizpah, we need to explore the conflict with the Gibeonites and how it led to her painful situation. This episode is crucial for understanding the consequences of Saul's actions and the critical role David had to play. During the conquest of Canaan, the Israelites made a covenant with the Gibeonites, a group of Amorites living in the region. In an effort to ensure peace and avoid conflict, Israel promised to protect the Gibeonites and not to attack them. However, Saul, while still king, violated this agreement. He launched an offensive against the Gibeonites, resulting in the death of many of them and breaking the commitment made by the Israelites. This breach of the covenant had serious consequences. In ancient Israel, breaking a pact was a grave offense that not only affected diplomatic relations, but also had spiritual and moral implications. People of Israel faced troubles, and a severe drought fell upon the land, lasting 3 years. This drought was seen not only as an agricultural failure, but as a direct consequence of the injustice committed by Saul. David, upon assuming the throne, inherited not only a divided kingdom, but also the problems caused by his predecessor's action. To restore justice and seek reconciliation with the Gibeonites, David sought to understand how he could correct Saul's wrong. The Gibeonites, representing the offense suffered, requested a specific compensation. Instead of demanding gold, silver, or the sacrifice of Israelites, the Gibeonites asked for something that was intended to provide atonement and justice: the execution of 7 descendants of Saul's house. The request reflected the need to atone for the spilled blood and restore the nation's honor and its agreement with the Gibeonites. David agreed to the Gibeonites' request and prepared to deliver the 7 descendants. Among these descendants were 2 of Rizpah's sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, as well as 5 sons of Saul's daughter, Merab. This act was both a fulfillment of the Gibeonites' demands and a demonstration of the weight of political decisions on people's lives. This episode not only highlighted the complex relations between Israel and the Gibeonites, but also revealed the harshness of decisions necessary to maintain order and justice. For Rizpah, David's action, though motivated by an attempt to rectify the injustice, brought profound personal suffering and a situation of extreme difficulty. Rizpah's story takes on a deeply moving and heroic dimension when we analyze her act of protecting her children's bodies after they were executed. This episode reveals not only Rizpah's personal suffering, but also the courage and determination that drove her to face a desperate situation. After the execution of the 7 descendants of Saul's house, the bodies were left exposed on the mountain, a procedure that, in those times, was a way to dishonor the dead. This practice not only demonstrated the severity of the act, but also was a way to showcase the Gibeonites' victory and the gravity of the punishment. Leaving the bodies exposed to animals and birds meant denying them a dignified burial, which was seen as a significant affront. In the midst of this humiliating situation, Rizpah did not resign herself to passive suffering. Instead, she took a courageous and determined stance to protect the dignity of her children's bodies. She made a shelter of coarse cloth and set it up on a rock near where the bodies were exposed. This was not just an act of desperation, but a demonstration of her strength and dedication as a mother. For nearly 6 months, Rizpah maintained a constant vigil, preventing scavenging birds during the day and wild animals at night from approaching the bodies. This continuous protection was an attempt to preserve the respect and dignity of the bodies, even in the face of extreme adversity. Her effort to confront these dangers and the hostile environment shows the depth of her love and determination. In ancient culture, exposing and leaving bodies unprotected was a form of dishonor. By protecting the bodies, Rizpah was challenging this tradition and fighting against the injustice done to her and her children. Her act was a way to maintain dignity, even in the face of public dishonor. This also reflects the spiritual dimension of the story, where human dignity and respect for the dead were seen as fundamental principles. When David became aware of Rizpah's bravery and dedication, he was moved by the depth of her suffering. Recognizing the need to restore the honor of the dead and fulfill his responsibility as king, David decided to act. He ordered that the bodies of Saul's descendants, which had been left exposed, be retrieved and given a dignified burial. This decision was crucial in resolving a spiritual and moral crisis affecting the entire kingdom. David had the bodies collected and taken to Saul's family tomb, where they received a proper burial. This gesture not only restored the dignity of the dead, but also marked a way to make amends for the wrong done to the Gibeonites. The dignified burial was an act of respect and acknowledgement of the suffering caused by the breach of covenant. The burial of the bodies had a significant impact on Israel's life. According to the biblical narrative, the severe drought that had plagued the land for 3 years was interrupted after the burial was performed. This suggests that the fulfillment of justice and the restoration of dignity were enough to reverse the crisis and restore divine blessing upon the nation. The end of the drought brought relief to the population suffering from hunger and scarcity. The crisis that had begun with the breach of the covenant and David's subsequent actions finally came to an end, allowing the land to recover and order to be restored. This event demonstrated how conflict resolution and the pursuit of justice are essential for a nation's prosperity and well-being. The story of Rizpah and David's decision illustrates the complexity of justice in an ancient context. David's act of restoring the dignity of the dead and resolving the crisis reflects the importance of addressing past wrongs and seeking reparation. It is a reminder that even in times of great suffering, justice and mercy have the power to bring restoration and hope. Rizpah's sacrifice and bravery are remembered as an example of dedication and resistance in the face of adversity. Her story is a testament to maternal love and the fight for dignity in difficult times. Although her suffering was profound, final resolution brought a sense of closure, restored order to the kingdom. And now, I would like to know, did you already know the story of Rizpah? Leave your answer in the comments. Subscribe to the channel to follow more inspiring stories like this. May God bless everyone who watched the video. See you next time.